So we're back, series 2 and episode 1 of the Back in My Day podcast, and what a great guest to kick things off, and that is Christine Tubbs. Christine shares her story about moving from Yorkshire in the UK to Australia. She talks about her career in learning and development, and she also talks about how her experiences with mental health and supporting her mum, who had dementia, shaped her passion for helping others. So Christine lives in an aged care facility, a specialist aged care facility, and talks about resilience, purpose, compassion. It's a really great story, so we hope you enjoy it. Please be aware this episode does cover mental health, anxiety, suicide, so if you need support in any of those areas, please call Lifeline on 131114. Thanks, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
People really and truthfully never lose that thing about knowing you from your inside rather than your outside. I got rheumatic fever when I was 5. That was quite serious at the time, and I had to virtually learn to walk again. That was a 10-pound pom, and we came on a boat to Australia. I realised had driven me a lot of my life.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Christine, for coming on the podcast. Really good to have you on.
Pleasure.
I just wanted to start at the beginning, if that's okay, and talk to you. I saw here that you're from Yorkshire in England, so I was keen to ask about that and what your memories are of growing up in Yorkshire. I know you were young.
Yeah, well, I came to Australia when I was nearly 7. I think they were interesting because you have those memories from your parents as well as yourself.
Yeah.
So I think I remember we were in the north of England. My father was a coal miner, and my mother was a weaver in a woolen mill. Yeah. So it's very much about that 50s kind of time,
a lot of people in that area work in the mines and things like that, right?
Oh, goodness me, yeah, what a hard job, really, really hard job. But, look, they earned good money, and so they should. But I was an only child, so, very close to my parents. My father and I were born on the same day. Not the same year, of course, but the same day.
Well, you don't hear that very often, being born on the same day.
Yeah, well, my grandfather as well, so there were 3 generations
So 3 generations all born
on
the
same day.
That's amazing. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I know, and I think my father and I, behaviour-wise, are terribly much alike. You know.
Did you clash at all?
Oh yes. I'm not into. I'm not really into star signs, but we're both, if you look, Sagittarian.
Right.
So it's a fire sign, and it's terribly. And my mum was kind of like the peacemaker, But at 7 years old, I mean, my parents were, everything to me. But I think I got rheumatic fever when I was 5.
Wow. Well, that must have been quite serious then.
That was quite serious at the time, and I had to virtually learn to walk again. And I think that time, that I do remember, my parents decided that was time to emigrate.
So why did they decide that? And why Australia?
Australia because of the health reason, the climate,
So being in the warm weather would help?
Being in the warm weather would help. That's what Dad
they thought
at the time. And, they'd been right about that. But I think it was that, and there was a big push in the 50s for migrants from
So this is like the 10-pound pom type thing?
That was a 10-pound pom, and we came on a boat to Australia. Yeah.
What was that boat trip like? Do you remember much about it?
Oh, I do, yeah. I remember that it was fun for my age.
Yeah.
So we had a bit of school on the boat, but we had a lot of recreation time.
Because we're talking like 6 weeks or so?
6 weeks, yeah, which to me felt... it felt a long time for my parents, I think. For me, it didn't, because I'd established...
Adventure, surely?
Yeah, beg your pardon?
It must have been like an adventure.
It was an adventure, absolutely, and we went to places we went down the Suez Canal, and there was, I do remember that it was very narrow, which wasn't what you would think it was even at this time. And you could see people on each side, and the Arab population, they're yelling at us, "Pommy bastards, go home." And I said to my father, "Oh, what's that all about?" Because I'm waving at them, and he said, there's not, because the British and that part of the world were completely, there was an unease between them, and I think, and I might have got history wrong, but I think they shut the Suez Canal for a while after, not after us, we didn't cause it, but I think for a while, because I think the rest of the boats used to go around through the Panama Canal or down through South Africa, down past there through the Cape Horn, I think it is, South Africa, so there was that time.
So they didn't close this canal because of you then? It wasn't because you're a 7-year-old girl intimidating
frightening those poor people. But look, that was the first experience of being out in what was the Anglo-Saxon world at the time. And if you remember, migration to England changed with Pakistan and India and West Indies. But at that time it was totally white. So for me to see an Arab person was something very different.
Yeah, of course.
It was still all these whitewashed, pale-looking English people going on this way.
It's so multicultural now. So for us, people my generation or younger, it's so multicultural. You don't think about that, but as you said, for you, you haven't seen people that
absolutely. And look, when I went back to England for a holiday the first time, I went into a shop and and I think appreciate this. So I think the gentleman was West Indian at the time. And he kind of opened his mouth and went, "Hello, love, what can I do for you?" And I'm like, I'm just going to speak in it, you see, with this Iman kind of language, and I think that, and that was it. And then I looked around and, everybody was either, were from different countries, and the food had changed, because, English food's not that exciting,
So how long was it before you went back to England?
Let me think now. I would have been about 24, I think.
So it's a fair bit of time had passed.
A fair bit of time had passed. And the landscape had changed, and the look of the place had changed.
It was so different.
It was different.
Yeah. I love how you jumped straight into that Yorkshire accent then. Did you have a bit of a Yorkshire accent when you were younger, or?
Oh yes.
Oh, you did, right? Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing was that if you're educated here, you start to lose quite a bit of that, because you're mixing with Australian kids. It's that age group. My parents never lost it, because it was so, they were in, I can't remember how old they were when we came in, maybe 30s or 40 or something. And it was entrenched. Whereas me, my life became as an Australian.
Well, if you're 7, you're gonna take on, you're gonna take on the Australian. Well, your voice is gonna change, isn't it? You're young enough; it's gonna make a difference.
Absolutely.
So your work was it learning and development? I think
yes, but it didn't. Yes, it is. Yeah. So I didn't start in that.
Right.
So of course I did everything to please my father, and when I left school, I worked in a bank. And I was a teller, and it just wasn't me. Look, I did okay and I enjoyed it, but I ended up falling into learning and development. So I'll cut that part because it's quite a journey, but I ended up working in the public service in Canberra. So I decided to leave Sydney and go and work in Canberra. And there I ended up in a job in personnel, as they called it then. They never called it human resource, but personnel, as you would know. And I ended up in there, and you applied for a job, and I applied for a job in the learning area and got it with no experience.
Right, okay.
And that was the beginning of the journey of being educated. And then I came back to Sydney because my father passed away.
Right.
And, you know, that was a shock. And I came back, and that's when I decided to stay in Sydney and develop my career as a learning development. And then I did a lot of organisational development as well.
So you got into that job, but then you did a bit of education around it after?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I felt that you needed that. I mean, especially to develop programs as well as facilitate programs, you need... and I was very interested in the adult side. I was interested in the management side, which I think was the key to everything. I think if you've got a good manager, you know, and they're really supportive of their team, you can take your team anywhere, you know.
So
that's the thing.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of difference, yeah.
How long were you in Canberra?
Oh gosh, it seemed like years, but look, it's an interesting culture. I was in Canberra now from 83 to 86, so about 3 years.
Okay.
And the day I arrived in Canberra was the day that Australia won the America's Cup yacht race.
Oh right, yeah.
So, you know, it was quite a day. People, and you know, public servants at that time, God bless them, but you know, it wasn't exactly a hard-working.
Yeah.
It was, some did, and that's probably unfair, but it was, now it's different. They have to achieve, they've got targets, they've got all that. So there was a lot of people not really working hard, you know.
Only if you're happy to talk about it. On here, it just mentions that you went on a bit of a journey with your mum who
I'm happy.
got
I really
dementia.
would like to talk about that, because that's, So, I guess the interesting thing for me was that after my father died, my mother really went quite to pieces. They were, in Australian terms, a Darby and Joan couple, you know, they did everything together.
That's nice.
Dad was Mum's world and Mum was Dad's world. And my father died suddenly of a heart attack.
I was going, it sounds like your dad passed suddenly,
If I go back to the stoic thing, he wouldn't go to a doctor because all doctors were crooks, you know, and they didn't do anything
It's
for
so
you.
frustrating, isn't it? Because you hear so many stories about people that got seriously ill, passed away, and if they'd just gone to the doctor, they probably could have really changed that.
Yeah, he believed in power of the mind, and he'd been in India during the war, and I think he'd had that experience of India. He loved India.
Yeah.
And I think he'd had that experience of that belief, you know, and I swear he'd had a couple of heart attacks before that where, you know, he'd managed to get through. Oh. And they were moving house. It's just an incredible story. They were moving house. He had packed some things that night, and probably that had put strain on his heart. Yeah. And suddenly he just died in his sleep, which, you know, from my perspective is a lovely thing that you don't suffer anymore. Yeah. But he was 68, you know, so he was pretty young. And Mum was shocked, and I was in Canberra. Mum had lost my telephone number, and she was distressed. You know, the police came, of course, to her, and suddenly the police came to the door of my apartment I was living in. And I thought, you know, the immediate reaction is, oh my God, what have I done, you know?
Yeah.
And they had to sit me down, and I was just, because my last words to Dad were, take it easy, stop rushing, because Dad was a rusher. Yeah. Take it easy, that were my last words to him. So my mum, to go back to why dementia, what I realised was that dementia was coming on a lot earlier than I'd picked up. So there's some behaviour there that, when hindsight, you don't see. You just think it's a bit of forgetfulness, it's a bit of stress. But it really came on when she was terribly ill, and this is going back. So she was at the worst when I got cancer. So I went to look after her. And she was, you know, she could have been a 24/7. At that time, she was all over the place. Yeah. You know, I was scared of her burning the house down because she came to live with me.
But it happened quite gradually.
Well, I think about it, yes. But it came to a head, and I'm not sure, and I don't know enough about this, but as to whether I imagine it gets worse as you get older, I guess, because of the physical change in you as well, I think. I could be wrong. But and suddenly there was concerns about her, and if I telephone her, she'd have the wrong part of the phone up, and I'd be shouting at her, Mum, you're there, and she'd go, I can't hear you, I can't, all of that.
Yeah.
But I had, at that time, I got cancer, and I'm not sure whether that triggered something more in her.
I was just about to say, so similar with my nan, my mum's mother, exactly what you just said there. Once they started thinking back, it was obvious that the dementia set in a long way before we realised.
Yes.
But also my granddad died, and apparently sort of trauma can bring on.
Trauma can bring on.
And we think it probably started then. That trauma then started it off. So
I think so too. And she went through bouts of depression as well, which also was a good indication. But that was years before. Yeah. So I was going through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and of course I was absolutely ill. I was like this. I was tired, and I wanted to take care of her.
I think it's tough for you to go through that and trying to look after her as well.
Stoic, there was a stoicism, Yeah. And anyway, one day, I was trying to help her out of the chair, and she hit me. And because she was a tiny little thing, and because I was so thin and frail, I nearly fell backwards at the time. So I called the ambulance, and they came, and she was fighting them and crying, and they took her to hospital, of course.
That's what scares me when you see the changing character, people that would never behave in a certain way, something like that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And, I went to hospital, and she was in hospital, and she was screaming that they were hurting her, and I was there, feeling ill, but
upsetting as well.
Upset, and I was an only child, so,
and of course, you didn't have extra support from siblings.
That's right. Anyway, they said to me, they gave me the hard conversation and said to me, look, you can't look after her anymore. I cried and said, yes, I can. Christine, it's a 24-hour job, and you are ill.
Yeah, you need rest.
And she needs to go somewhere. And I found a nursing home for her. And then, interesting enough, there was some joy with that experience as well. So mum, interesting things happen to people with dementia. They're either aggressive, totally aggressive, but there are others that are quite funny. Mum was one of those. So, she had stories. Oh my goodness, she'd escaped, and a nice young man. So suddenly she became a bit sexual.
Yeah, right.
So a nice young man had, come and got her out of jail and brought her back, and he was really lovely. And then she'd say to the male nurse who was homosexual, oh, I think you like me and all that sort of thing, and I think so. And then one day I came in and she said, there's a goat in my wardrobe, a goat.
Right.
And I said, Mum, and the thing about dementia is you never argue with them. Yeah. I learned that. You don't go, no, Mum, there's no goat there, because they just get absolutely distressed. So I had to pull out everything out of the wardrobe to prove
sort of really hoping
the goats.
I was hoping there you were going to say she'd actually gone off and found a goat and brought it back, and when you opened it, there was a goat in there.
There was a goat in there. But things like that. So many stories that.
So she also turned into a real. It's almost turned into a real character with this.
She turned into a character. My mum was, completely. I mean, I'm the outgoing one. Dad was the outgoing one. Mum was more introverted.
Yeah, but all of a sudden that changed.
All of a sudden that changed. But one of the things I realised was music brought everything back. So she couldn't remember. She said to me, you haven't visited me for ages. And I used to visit her twice a week. Because I went back to work. I fortunately started to recover from cancer, which is just such a blessing.
Obviously you beat it, and it was...
I was diagnosed in 2006, and I was... through my treatment in 2007, so we're looking at 18 years now.
So what sort of age were you when you got cancer?
50. Well, no, 58.
So
58.
so it was sort of young to
Pretty young, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a good thing. And she stayed in that nursing home until she passed away at 92.
All right, so okay. So she...
That's pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
And she'd had a lot of illness in her life. She'd had breast cancer as I didn't have breast cancer, but she had breast cancer, she had cancer.
Yeah.
She'd struggled with a number of illnesses. And she was a fighter. And deep down inside, that's what was going on with her, you know.
It sounds really weird to say, but so did the dementia almost, it wasn't all negative?
No.
Did this side to your mum that it brought out was almost enjoyable, seeing that side to her?
Yes, it was. And, you know, and I think from that if people would always remember, you know, that visiting is so important.
Yeah.
Because the nurses there would say to me, look, you know, it doesn't matter whether she knows who you are. And she used to call me a sister, you know, that's fine. I don't care what she called me. But you go there and they say she knows you're there. She will always know you're there, you know. And that was the blessing. And I used to read the paper to her and I'd do things with her. And, you know, it was just, I think it was the most wonderful time. Even though it was painful, but it was a wonderful time for mother and daughter in some kind of interesting way, you know. Yeah.
So my nan had it, and she passed away only about a year ago. But I didn't, because of being here and her and being in the UK, I didn't see much of her. But when I did go back, that thing where she couldn't remember what she did 5 minutes ago, but she could tell me the most vivid stories from when she was young.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that was, you know, it was hard to, I guess hard to watch, but the whole thing where the memory just keeps going back and back and back. What I didn't realise was someone explained it to me, but almost it's like she was becoming a child, because she could only really remember being a child, so she was a child. And you could really, we took her for a walk around the lake, and then some people walked past the dog, and then the way she got excited, she said, "Oh, doggy, doggy." It was almost like she was like a 6-year-old.
Mum was like that too, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, and I think something, I learned a lot about Mum and Dad's life from her at that time, which she'd never told me before.
Yeah.
Now, I did try to separate, was it her mind that was making? Some of it was, you know. But other things I could tell were a bit of reality, because I'd kind of picked up on that when I was younger. But, you know, it gave me a real insight into dementia. Yeah. You know, and of course, then I thought, oh, is it hereditary, you know?
You start getting all those worries.
Yeah, but look, you know, I mean, now research is much better, and they're starting to look at early dementia rather than, you know, it's not typically when you get to a certain age that you suddenly, that happens.
Yeah.
And I think they're looking at, you know, the signs of early dementia, and I think that would have been good for me with Mum, because I may be able to kind of help get rid of some of that, you know, that's the thing.
Can I ask you about your transition into aged care? I've got here that you arrived, and the first day there was a party and belly dancers. You sort of wondered what you got yourself into. Because a part of this podcast is that we wanted to use it as a way to almost help people that hadn't had any experience with aged care, might have a loved one that's going into aged care and something like that. So could we also make this a bit sort of, you know, help people that are going into that? What was it like for you, that transition?
Well, it's different. So this is an aged care home for mental health.
Right.
Very different to an aged care home where you're older. Okay.
Right.
So I came here with a mental health problem.
Right.
And, you know, it would be a long story to tell you, but basically I tried to take my life.
Right, okay. Right.
So things built up for me over a period of time. There were mistakes I'd made. I was, you know, it was hard on myself. And maybe one day, if you ever get the chance, we can talk about that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
at the moment, it's a bit, you know.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that's how I ended up here. So I ended up in hospital, and out at Concord Hospital, where I was given treatment. So, you know, the important thing there is about it's about settling you down from anxiety.
Yeah.
And anxiety is a thing that I realised had driven me a lot of my life.
Yeah. And please don't talk about any stuff.
No,
yeah.
and it just builds up. That's all I'll say. So
okay.
I'll now make it positive because it is.
Yeah, great, yeah.
So I ended up here, and I had to find a place to go, and I wanted something in the inner west because inner west I liked, you know. And I've always been a city gal. Like I lived in Redfern, Surrey Hills, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd lived in Camperdown before I came here.
You're always amongst the more sort of lively areas.
I loved it, you know. I love Newtown. What a funky, fabulous place it is.
Yeah.
But I think that that was what I wanted. Now, I think that I always had this vision of nursing homes, you know. Here you are, you're kind of sitting in a chair staring at TV, and, you know...
Yeah, everyone has that idea.
That vision, somebody feed... But it doesn't have to be that way. And for some people, they're in a terribly critical situation. Yeah. So if they're staring at TV or it's because they're in that position. Mm. But, you know, here... particularly at this place, you know, when I came in and saw a belly dancer, I've been belly dancer, oh God.
Yeah.
Up there doing a thing, and I thought, and I was, it was packed, you know, and they brought me in here, and I thought, what have I hit here, you know? Yeah. And the woman who runs the place here, Jenny, I call her a tour de force of nature, you know, she's a force of nature. Mm. She's a powerful personality.
That's a service manager here?
Yeah, she's a boss of this place, you know. She's amazing. And I know I came to look at the place initially, and they were going to put me in a room, and I felt it was a bit dark and all that. And there were a couple of things that, the noise was the thing, you know, because you've got mental health people. So there was a woman screaming at the front door, and I was like, oh my God, what have I hit? Yeah. So I went, so she found me this room so much, it was lovely. And, you know, and then there were activities. So, you know, people can choose to do them like in all nursing homes or not.
I've got a long list here of all your activities and hobbies and keep busy, so
I'm constantly busy.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think if you want to, you can grab it by the horns and look at it and go, look, you know, this isn't the departure lounge. Not yet. You'll depart one day from here. Yeah. But, you know, think of it this way. You're no longer working, which is, it's good. You know, work was important to me, and I had to get over not working anymore, but I did. Mm. But you know what? It's more about what you get out of life, but what you put into it. And, you know, Jenny's given me the opportunity to do things. I wrote a script for a film.
Yeah, I was looking forward to asking you about that. Yeah, that's great. How long does that take?
It took me, well, it's not a big film. It would go for about 15 minutes, you know. But even 15 minutes of dialogue. So they wanted to make a film here, you know, I think to highlight mental health and being attracted to the power of music that would change memory and things like that, you know, and bring them back to a state of happiness. And also to say that people had lives before they came here, you know. If you were to interview people here, and some are hard to interview, but a lot of them have had things like engineering backgrounds, you know, things like that. They've been in big jobs.
This is exactly why we're doing this podcast, because I think that thing you're talking about there, that sort of almost stigma where people see, once you see someone in an aged care home, especially the ones you talked about before, where they might be, you know, later on in life, or, you know, people forget that they did have these amazing lives before that, and, you know, just because you see them how they are now, that doesn't mean that that's how they've always been. You know, so that's why we did this podcast.
Yeah,
we wanted to sort of get people to talk about their lives before.
Yeah, and I think the important thing I wanted to highlight as well, and I know this is about the importance of being in a nursing home, and it is, but the stigma of being old is difficult around society, but also add to that mental health, and you've just got a whammy happening, you know, it's a double whammy. And for me, you know, I've experienced mental health, but I've come out of it pretty well, you know. I don't have those thoughts anymore, I don't have that. all I have is a positive part of my life, you know.
Can I ask you, does that mean that, so will you stay here, or will you now, with this being a place that's for, you said specialises in mental health, will you go somewhere else, or are you happy here?
How interesting you should say that. It's very timely you should say that. So a couple of weeks, Jenny came to me and said, look, you know, you like the stimulation of people around you and intellectual, like I read books and everything, you know, and I like that kind of discussion at that level. Now, to be truthful here, you don't get it as much. Because people are in a terrible situation.
That's what I was asking,
But you connect with people, and what you learn is that just because you're able to do these things, it doesn't make you any better than the person who came in here, who was on the streets, homeless, and without anything. And she asked me, you know, Christine, I think you could go into a nursing home without this. And I'd be happy to help you do that. And, you know, there are days when I hear the screaming and the yelling and the carrying on and the swearing and all of that, and I think, oh my, what am I doing here? And then suddenly I think, you know, I do belong here in a really interesting way.
And you can help others?
And I can help others.
Yeah, that's great.
And by helping others, I'm helping myself, because, you know, I'm becoming a more, I think, you know, more tolerant person. I'm not saying I was intolerant. That would probably be unfair. But I had my biases. We all do. Let's be honest, you know. And I think what I've realised is that, you know, there's an expression, you know, there, for the grace of God go I, and I'm not particularly religious, by the way, but I just think that's true, you know. It could happen to anybody, and I just want to say that to everyone listening and watching, is it can happen to you, and I'm not making you frightened, I'm just saying... Be aware that life can change in a second.
You never know what's around the corner.
You never know what's around the corner. But for me, this is my home. You know, this is reality. You know, this is what is for me. And unfortunately, I also have been taken out to meet a group of senior citizens who aren't in nursing homes as a social thing. So I get that intellectual...
So you're still getting that,
I'm still getting that.
Oh, that's great. I love all of that. I love the fact that you've gone through that period in your life that's brought you here. And now you're at the other end of that. You're still happy to stay and to help. And
I've been given every opportunity. Look, you know, to make the film. I'm now writing a book. So, you know.
It's amazing.
Not that if it doesn't get published, it doesn't matter. But the joy of writing
just the actual joy of doing it.
It's amazing. I got given a cat, which I love.
Yes, that is Sparkle.
Have you seen her this morning?
No, I haven't.
No, sometimes she wanders around. She's very sweet, but she also is amazing, and also that's the power. And in whether it's a mental health home or a you know, a home for people who are just getting older, animals are so much part of that. Oh my God, the healing process that Sparkle has brought for people here. She sits with the people who are the most ill, and she just sits there and looks at them, and you see people who are absolutely grumpy and won't get on with anyone. They just smile, Sparkle, and suddenly their whole behaviour changes.
I think every aged care facility should have pets. Make such a difference.
Mum thought there was a goat in there, so there you go.
Look, thanks so much for coming. The stories have been amazing. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you. It's been great to chat to you too.
Can I ask 2 more questions
before
I let you go? With all of that knowledge you now have around being in aged care, is there any advice that you could give to someone that's coming into aged care, or a family that may be at that point where someone's coming into aged care? Any advice you would?
I would. The thing that's important is I would really look at the staff, because the behaviour of the staff towards you is going to be the indication of whether you are going to be happy here. So, you know, we know the stories, the horror stories, you know. And it's really important to think of not just the physical part of what it looks like, although that's important, but it's more about listening to the staff. Now, the reason I say that is when I was looking for a place for my mother, I went to a nursing home, and I was sitting waiting to be taken around, and I was fortunately near the staff room, and they were mocking one of the residents, and I could hear it. And I immediately just said, "Oh, no, thank you." She goes, "You haven't looked at the place." I said, I've seen and heard enough. And when I went to the one that I finally picked for Mum, they were delightful. And here's the same.
I'd say so. It's been really positive here. So the staff are great.
The staff are wonderful here.
Yeah, that's good.
They're beautiful. And what a job. What a hard job. I mean, apart from that, they've got the mental side as well as the physical side as well.
From us working within the aged care sector, doing recruitment and staffing, with the pressure we've seen that people in the sector are under, I've always looked and said, I could never do your job. Like when we talk to managers,
same here.
So they do some amazing things.
They do, and it's a sad reflection of how pay structure is these days. We pay some CEO, sure, it's an important job, millions of dollars to run a company, but these people are saving lives, and when you've got that part as well, it's really unfair that their salaries aren't. But that they do it for love, because my goodness me, they can't do it for money. And I think that's the other thing that keeps me here, and it may keep everyone who goes into nursing home. You do develop relationships with them. And it's probably like a family, They're young people, which is a delight. I love having young people around, And I think it's a delight to interact with them because they bring out the outside world into here. The other thing is, don't lose touch with and look, I might say, I hope that family are listening to this, for goodness sake, don't leave them in a nursing home and take no responsibility for them. Because there are so many people here who have family, they never visit.
It's really sad, isn't it?
And the difference when people visit and the response to that, you could see the happiness of a son or a daughter, whatever, a brother, sister, whatever, visiting them is quite incredible.
Again, with this podcast, we've seen that. So just us coming in and having guests on the podcast. We've had people on that don't have any visitors, and they just love doing something and being involved in something like this, having a chat. Going through memories. It's really good for people as well. So last question for you. If you could go back in time and speak to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you give?
I would say don't be hard on yourself. I think that's the thing. Don't compare yourself to others. It's teenagers do that, don't they?
Especially life with social media now. Everyone's trying to make out they've got the best life, so you look at that and go,
yes, and I want to look a certain way and all that. Now, there's some of that around even before social media in my time, when you'd go, that girl is really pretty, and why aren't I as nice looking, or that. But I just think, don't be hard on yourself, and enjoy life. My gosh, from 16 now I'm 72. Boy, that's gone fast,
It just gets faster and faster.
It gets faster and faster. So just don't be hard on yourself. Enjoy life, and enjoy your body image. Remember that it's all about what's inside and not outside. But unfortunately, the judging of the world is about what you look like from the exterior.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But people really and truthfully never lose that thing about knowing you from your inside rather than your outside. So
just be yourself.
Be yourself. Enjoy.
Awesome. Honestly, thank you so much. It's been such a great chat.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.